Today, I want to tell you a true story. A story about reason, doubt, and faith. Its central figure is one of the most respected scientists of our time, Francis Collins, a medical doctor, who dedicated his life to science. He led the Human Genome Project, decoding the blueprint of life itself, and later served as the director of the U.S. National Institutes of Health. To the public, he embodied rationality. Yet, few people know that his life once went through a deep inner struggle. Collins grew up in North Carolina. His parents were artists. The house filled with music and poetry, but not a trace of religion. He loved logic and mathematics, believing there was nothing science could not explain. To him, faith was merely the anesthesia of the soul. He once told a friend, "I'd rather trust an equation than believe in God." When he entered medical school, he studied human cells under a microscope. He believed that through science alone, he could unlock the mysteries of the entire universe. For him, faith was like a painkiller. It might feel comforting, but it couldn't cure anything. He told his students, "Evidence is the only credible language. And also, religion is of no use to me." These declarations stood like road signs on his path, reminding him to avoid anything that could not be proven. Until one day, a single question from a patient changed the course of his entire life. One morning, Collins stood at the bedside of a dying woman. She looked at him, her gaze gentle yet penetrating, and asked in a frail but peaceful voice, "Doctor, do you believe in the soul?" The words pierced him like any dull through armor. He could explain how the heart contracts, why cells die, and recite molecular structures and genetic codes. But he had no answer for that one question. No, why? That night he sat alone in the lab. Fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow on the glassware. He had always thought that the world was fully measurable. But suddenly, the data seemed cold and distant, like neon in the fog. The old woman's body was weak, yet her peace was unshakable. She didn't debate theology. She simply asked, "Do you believe in the soul?" That peace slipped past the buzz of machinery, past the antiseptic smell, past the pride he had always worn like armor. For the first time he realized, science had taught him the phenomena of life, but never its meaning. He began to wonder, if science can answer every how, who will answer the why? For a long time, life continued as usual. Rounds, charts, conferences. But in the late-night quiet, he found himself thinking, if the soul doesn't exist, where did her peace come from? Collins started reading books he once dismissed. The Book of Job showed him suffering was an TA math problem. Augustine's Confessions revealed the tension between ego and grace. C.S. Lewis's argument for moral law confronted him with questions he could introduce into variables. He still read like a scientist, marking, questioning, analyzing. Yet some sentences refused to be dissected. They fell into the soil of his heart like seeds. He began discussions with Christian scholars. He expected anti-intellectual arguments, but instead met minds sharper and gentler than his own. They told him, "Reason, isn't the enemy of faith. It's a gift from God. Search with it, but don't let it become your God." The key had entered the lock, and the weight of the door was already changing. Late winter, Collins joined a retreat in the mountains. Ice clung to the morning trails as he hiked upward. The clouds tore open, and golden light poured into the valley like water from heaven. He stopped, his breath a soft mist in the cold air. No thunder, no visions, just a sudden sense of being seen, as if an unseen presence watched him with kindness, as if someone whispered, "I am here." Heat surged in his chest, unexpected, overwhelming. He who had no use for tears in a laboratory felt his eyes sting. He set his backpack down and slowly knelt on frozen earth. a posture unfamiliar yet utterly right. He spoke, his voice trembling but true. If you are real, let me know you. The wind brushed the treetops. The light marched on. No voice answered from the sky, yet a peace fell upon him, a cloak warm enough to stand again. He knew he was no longer alone. Back in the lab, everything looked the same. Microscopes, centrifuges, data streams. Yet his eyes had changed. The nucleotides were no longer merely statistics or probabilities, but rhythm, not chaos, but poetry, a language with rules deeper than chance. He scribbled in his notebook, language and design. When asked whether God wrote DNA, he smiled and said, "When I read the genome, I feel EOM reading a language greater than my own." He did not abandon reason to believe. He was embraced by a higher reason, a wisdom beyond human ceilings. Life did not suddenly become easy. Critics doubted him, doubts visited him. But he slowed down. He listened more. One clinic day, a young father cradled a sick child, exhaustion clinging to his eyes. Collins explained the treatment options, paused and gently added, "I'll be praying for you." The man's eyes filled with tears. The child's tiny hand gripped his finger, a fragile, warm anchor. Collins understood then. Science shows us how to fight disease. Faith shows us how to embrace despairing souls. He began to work differently. Every experiment was an offering, not worship of knowledge, but stewardship of it. Every conversation, a chance to give hope, not dogma, but presence. He learned to say, "I don't know what tomorrow holds, but ignore you want to face it alone." At conferences, sharp questions still came. A scientist wearing religion like a coat. Aren't you just disguising superstition? He no longer rushed to defend himself. He simply said, "I still believe in evidence and welcome different conclusions. But I admit evidence brought me to the door, and love invited me in." Some remained skeptical, but others' eyes suddenly bright understood. His calling was not to win arguments, but to live with honest integrity, honest inquiry, honest doubt, honest awe. 7. The language of light. Years later, speaking to young scholars, he said, "Science tells us how the world works. Faith tells us why the world exists." Evening light streamed through the windows and fell across the chalkboard. A familiar friend. "Waiting to be caught," he said softly. "Now I know truth also finds us, in prayer, in love." His research continued. His prayers continued. Every gene a sentence, every encounter a signpost. On the hard nights when doubt returned, he remembered that mountain, the wind, the mist, the golden light. And the whisper meant, just for him, "I am." So Collins resolved to spend his life responding, seeking design through reason, knowing the designer through faith. And when science reaches a boundary, he does not fear the blank space. For beyond the blankness, there is light. Reason showed Collins the structure of the world. Faith taught him to understand its language.